my beautiful crafty friends. I am Katya with Lunar Sun Creations. Today we're going to be starting on our Gnome Snow Day 8x8 gatefold album. So I just want to go through the materials that we're going to need first, and then we will get going. So first you'll need your paper collection. Shameless plug, I'm going to be using my own paper collection, which is the Gnome Snow Day. And it is available in my Etsy shop. There is a video going through it very thoroughly on my channel, so I will link that in the description box below, and you can go check it out in more detail. And then we need scissors, ruler, craft pick or pokey tool, something to punch some holes for when we're doing swing tabs, some brads for those swing tabs, some magnets. I use a very thin 1 millimeter by 10 millimeter disc magnets. I believe I used 22 in this album. We will need cardstock. I used 17 or 18 pieces of 12 by 12 cardstock. If you only have 8.5 by 11 cardstock, that's also fine. There will be just a couple pieces that will be slightly altered, but for the most part, you could we can modify it. Tyvek is not entirely necessary, but I highly recommend it, or some kind of very thin rip-resistant material. So we're going to put that along the spine pieces, just so when the album is folding constantly, those won't rip over time. And then we'll need some chipboard for the covers. I just use a medium weight chipboard. It's got like it makes that noise. You can start a band with it. A chipboard band. And then we'll need our paper trimmer and our scoreboard with scoring tool, bone folder, all that jazz, some score tape and or wet adhesive. And yes, my wet adhesive is in a large ketchup bottle. I just find it the easiest to I use so much of it that, yeah. Anyway, that works for me. Optionally, you can use Distress Oxide and an ink dauber to ink all the edges of your pattern paper, just to kind of distress them a little bit. That is an optional scenario though. All right, I'm gonna clean up my area here and then we will get rolling. If you haven't seen the walkthrough of this album yet, I will also link it down below, and I'll have a whole playlist of all of the bits and pieces that go with this album and paper collection. So you can go check that out if you want to know exactly what it looks like when finished. All right, so beginning with our cover, we are going to cut some chipboard. So your back piece will be 8 by 8 inches. And then we will need two pieces that are 8 inches by 1 3/4 inches. And 2 pieces that are 8 inches by 4 inches. Okay, so cut out those. And then we're also going to need 2 pieces of cardstock that are 10 by 12. Now, if you don't have the 12 by 12 cardstock, like I was saying, you'll just have to put 3 pieces of cardstock together. So what we're going to do here, this is going to be for wrapping our covers. So we're going to overlap these 2 pieces of cardstock by about 3/4 of an inch. If you don't have 12 by 12, then you'll just kind of be putting 3 pieces of 8.5 by 11 together on the, you'll have to cut it at 10. So you'll need to have 3 across. Okay, so that is our first step. We are going to put 2 strips of score tape along the edge of one of these pieces and remove the backing, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of wet adhesive as well, just to make sure that it is super duper strong. Okay, so we're just going to overlap those by about 3/4 of an inch. So once your 2 pieces are together, it's about 23 inches wide. Okay, so however you get to that, so 10 high, 23 inches wide, however you get there, that's how long it needs to be. So if you do have Tyvek, this is where we're going to use it. Cut 2 pieces that are 3.5 inches across by 7, and we're just going to kind of place this in the center. And then these 2 pieces are going to slide just a little bit under here, kind of like that, because we want them to be underneath here and here. So we want them to cover the creases, like be underneath the creases between each of the pieces. So this is how it's going to sit. All right, so you want the Tyvek to be showing here and showing here. So we want the Tyvek to be everywhere that the album is going to fold up. Okay, so I'm just going to remove my pieces here. And I'm going to slide these out just a little bit. And now I know where to stick them. So I'm just going to kind of mark with a pen or a pencil or whatever where they should go. And then I will put a little bit of score tape and the wet adhesive. When I want something to like really stick right away, I'll use both of them. I find they're like really awesome in conjunction because the score tape makes it so it's in place and doesn't move around. And the glue is like good for longevity. Because eventually the score tape will kind of like break down and lose its adhesion. But if you just use wet glue, I find that things wiggle around too much and I tend to get things a little bit crooked because I'm impatient and don't let things dry, so I start to do other things while it's still drying and then it moves around on me. So I'm going to use both. That joke I made about the, well, it wasn't really a joke, it wasn't really funny, the the chipboard band, when I was warbling the chipboard, it made me think of on Halloween, we went to see a concert called the Junkyard Band, and my boyfriend Ian was doing a fire spinning performance with a few other people, and the Junkyard Band was really cool because they were literally playing instruments out of junk. One guy was playing an old dryer. There was a person on the bottles, like just blowing into the bottles. A guy playing PVC tubing, you know, like PVC piping. And every one of their instruments was like made out of junk and they sounded great. So it was quite impressive actually. It made me think of that. Alright, so just getting this down. Oh goodness. Zuri's just made a big stinky right now. Smelly cat, what are they feeding you? It's actually really, really good food from the vet. So I don't know why he's so stinky. That was probably too much information for you, but we got it anyway. Okay, so back to the project. Putting these down, and then we're going to glue down our chipboard pieces. So I'm just going to put glue on the back of them. For the chipboard, I like to use like an old, like a dollar store foamy thing, just to kind of smooth the glue so I know that there's glue all over the place and then it doesn't make those big kind of like ridges that you can get as it dries. Okay, push that down, and then the 2 small bits go next. And you want to leave about somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 inch of space in between the chipboard pieces. Pardon me. Okay, and then the last 2 on either side of that. I'll put a time stamp down, so if you already know how to like wrap a cover and you're bored with this part and you don't want to see it, I'll put a timestamp so you can kind of fast forward to when we start creating the actual pages. Okay, I'm going to put something heavy on this and give it a few minutes to dry, and then we will move forward. Okay, so once your chipboard pieces are solidly on there, mine are not quite dry because once again I'm impatient, it just doesn't happen for me. We are going to put score tape all the way around the perimeter of the chipboard, and then we're going to take our scissors and cut the corners at an angle. So I like to like cut in until the corner and then kind of angle my scissors and cut out again, so it just creates a little bit of a not quite a straight across. I just find that's cleaner, but feel free to cut straight across if that's better for you. I just like this way it looks better. Alright, and now we're going to remove the score tape backing from one of the long sides, add some wet adhesive, and then roll it up and over the chipboard. So I like to start in the middle and kind of slowly move outwards. Okay, we're going to do that to all four sides. Okay, go over all of those with your bone folder. Now, if you get any corners that have like this corner pokey thing, you can cut that little tiny tip off and then just kind of use the end of your scissors or whatever to just kind of roll it in. And now take a ruler and just in each of the creases just kind of fold it up just to like encourage the paper to fold where you want it to fold before moving on to our binding system. Okay, so we're going to set that aside for just a second, and now cut two pieces of cardstock that are 7.5 inches by 6.5 inches. Okay, and grab your scoreboard. Okay, so because our album is going to sit like this, and we're going to have one page open and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, like that. So we're going to have two slightly different binding systems because the pages, this page here sits in the crease between these ones, and this page here sits in between the crease of these ones. Okay, so because they open like that, we have two different sets of measurements for our binding. So stay with me here. This is the most confusing part of the whole tutorial. Everything after this is super easy peasy, I promise. All right, your first one, you're going to put it in on the 6.5 inch side. So the 6.5 is at the top, and we're going to score at 1 1/4, 2, 2 3/4, 3 3/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/4. Okay, so this is going to be on your left hand side. So maybe just take a pen or something and just mark left on it somewhere, just enough that you can see it. And then the other one, the right side, is going to be scored at 1, 1 3/4, 2 1/2, 3 1/4, 4, 4 3/4. Okay, and that is the right one. So I'm just going to write right on there. Okay, perfect. So put your scoreboard away for a minute. Now here is how it's going to work. On the raised part, we're going to put score tape here and here. Skip this one, here, and here. Okay, so this is on the right one. On the left one, score tape here, 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 and here. So basically the same thing. The two, there's like one in the center and then two 3-inch sections on either side of that. So that's where we're going to put our score tape. Okay, so once they look like this is the right one, this is the left one. Now we're going to remove the tape backing and put just a little bit of glue on one of them and then fold those together. And then the other bits go backwards. Okay, so now you have something that looks like that. And there's the rest of the back, okay? And we're gonna do the same thing with these two. Okay, so the two bits with adhesive fold together, and then the two score marks beside them go the opposite direction. Okay, so now we've got something that looks like that. Okay, so I'm going to, before I continue, I'm going to put some score tape on both sides of these flanges, I think is the word for them. I'm not exactly sure what they're called. We'll go with that. That sounds good. It's a good word. So I'm just putting some score tape on either side of these flanges because this is where our pages are going to slide onto and adhere into the album. Okay, and then I'm going to just trim off, I'm going to miter the corners of these pages just a tiny bit. It just makes it easier for the pages to slide in when there's just a little bit. Sorry, it's dark out right now and it's hard to see. Okay, so it looks like that. All right, now we're going to do the same thing over here on the left one. Okay, so there is the left one. I'm going to add my score tape again and miter the corners. And really go over all the creases with your bone folder really well. The better it's creased, the better the pages will lay. And the better they'll move as you turn them. Okay, fantastic. So there's your left, there's your right. Now we are going to put them down onto the album. So we need some score tape and wet adhesive on the back of each of these. Just realized that I think it's going to be easier if I just use my really wide score tape. That will just help. Before we put them into the album, I thought this might help to make it just a little bit easier to understand. So grab your scoreboard back out. We've got the left binding system. I'm just going to bring you in a little bit here. Okay, we've got the left binding system. The longer part is right here. Okay, we're going to put it in and we are going to score at 1. And then we're going to score at 2 7/8. Okay, and then on the right one, we are going to score at 5/8 and at 2 1/2. Okay, now put your scoreboard away. Okay, so I thought that might just make it a little bit easier for you to understand what I'm saying. So we're going to remove all of the adhesive on the back, and then we're going to line up those score marks that we just made with the creases in our cover, like in between the chipboard. Okay, so the wider half, the wider bit is going to go towards the inside. Okay, and we're going to line up this score line and this score line with the creases. And center it top to bottom. Really push it down there. Okay, and then we're going to use our ruler again and just put it in that crease so that you can bend your album. Or bend your cover where it's supposed to bend. So those score lines just help this bend to be a little cleaner. Okay, and then you might want to clamp it because these are going to want to come up at the moment because they're still wet with glue. So I'm just going to clamp these on all four sides until they're completely dry. Okay, and then we're going to do the other side. And again, the wider part is going to go to the right. So it's going to be right here. Okay, so we're going to take off all of that tape backing and add our wet adhesive. Now try to make sure that it's even with the one across, like on the vertical. Okay, and then I'm going to clamp these as well and then set this aside to dry, and then we can make our base pages. So at the moment it looks like that. All right, perfect. So let's set that aside. Okay, while we wait for our cover to completely adhere and dry, the glue to dry, we are going to make our base pages. You need 8 pieces that are 8.5 inches by 7.5 inches. Okay, and then we are going to score each one of them at 3/4 on the 8.5 inch side. Okay, so all 8 of these just get scored at 3/4. Okay, add score tape to that 3/4 inch section on each of those. And we're adding the score tape on the valley side, which means the indented side. When you score a piece of cardstock, it creates the indent that we call the valley, and then the raised edge on the opposite side that we call the mountain. And whenever possible, it's best to fold away from the valley. That just like helps keep the fibers of the paper intact and as strong as they can be. Okay, so once we have score tape on that 3/4 inch section everywhere, I'm going to miter all the corners. So I'm going to do a few of these at a time because they're all the same. So again, we're just going to cut off a little bit at an angle. This just creates a much neater fold, like when you can't see the very edge of the cardstock. Once it's folded, it gets hidden. Just an aesthetic thing. Okay, so now we're gonna fold on all of those score marks and give them a good crease to all 8 pieces, and then we'll be joining them together 2 by 2 to form our base pages. Okay, fantastic. Now take 2 of them, take the backing off one of them, add a tiny bit of glue. The glue, if you just want to do score tape, that is fine. You might have to reattach something in the distant future. And then we are just literally going to adhere these together. So that side of one goes there, and then kind of like fold this over to adhere the other side. Okay, so it's open on either end, and that is your base page. So now you're going to do that 3 more times to make 4 base pages in all. Okay, so this is going to create 4 base pages. Now these, one end is going to slide onto the flange in the album. The other end is going to be open, so you can use that as a large area for like a pull-out. Or if you'd prefer to close it, you can just put a little bead of wet adhesive right there and close it up, and just have it without an opening there. So totally up to you. So once those are all made and your cover has had a chance to dry, we can put our pages into our album. We're just going to remove the backing from either side of one of our flanges. Run a little bead of glue. And then literally just slide your page onto the flange. Just push it down, make sure it's in place, make sure it's even top to bottom, and then give it a little press. And there's your first page, and then do the same thing with the second one. And because we cut that little tiny bit off either end of the flanges, these slide on just so easily. Okay, so there's 2, now we'll do the other side. Now, most of my albums, I do all the interactive elements and decorate before I put my pages into the album. But because this one's a little bit special and it's doing things a little bit differently, I wanted it to be very easy to understand which page I was talking about. So this is how it will look when they're all together. Alternate, it's hard to see right now, but so how it's going to go is the first left one, that's going to be page 1. This is page 2. This is page 3, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's how they're going to go. All right, so I'm gonna set this aside and we're gonna get our pieces cut for our interactive elements.